ages. Massachusetts is the second oldest distribution system and colder weather than average. Potentially, that means its emissions factors should be higher. However, even if these studies had huge sample sizes and all of the studies took place in Massachusetts, it would still be smart to double check that the expected result is the actual result, especially if the calculation is as important as this one is. This is why it's also a good idea to occasionally check that your bank account balance actually matches what you think it should be. Otherwise, there can be really unpleasant surprises. The 2015 McCain et al. Study by Harvard and Boston University shows a method of checking the amount of gas we're losing in the atmosphere in Massachusetts. Monitors were placed on the top of tall buildings across Greater Boston. The monitors measured ethane, a chemical marker found only in natural gas. Repeating this research is a method of confirming that the selected emission factors are right and that the state is meeting its greenhouse gas emissions goal in reality and not just on paper. My strong recommendation is that the monitors are reinstalled on tall buildings across Greater Boston, and the data from them is analyzed annually in a long-term monitoring study. I understand the DEP probably wouldn't have the money to do that. Heat will happily raise the funding for those monitors and find the siting and get researchers who will analyze the data. I only ask that the DEP writes a support letter, maybe a strong one, to be used in soliciting this funding. This next year, HEAT will work with the 3 largest gas companies in the state to measure the emissions of the environmentally significant or high-volume gas leaks to verify that the largest gas leaks are getting targeted for repair. We will actually verify the emissions off of these large gas leaks. This is a great way of getting bottom-up verification that the emissions are being reduced. By also having a long-term ethane monitoring study with those monitors on the tall buildings, you would also have a top-down confirmation that you are fixing the environmentally significant leaks and dealing with the situation accurately, that the anthropogenic methane in the atmosphere is declining. Through this long-term study, you'd be confirming that the state is meeting its greenhouse gas goals, not only up to 2020, but beyond. You'd be able to ensure you aren't overdrawing the bank account of the next generation. Thanks.
So next is Rafi.
Rafi Martirosyan from Joule Unlimited. We're a producer of low-carbon fuels in Massachusetts. So I wanted to comment specifically on 310 CMR 60.00 on transportation. So if you look at transportation in Massachusetts, there are basically 3 high-level ways to reduce emissions. Reducing vehicle miles traveled, improving our fuel mix and having more low-carbon sources of fuel, like biofuels and electricity, and improving fuel economy. The most impact can be had here in Massachusetts in fuel mix because fuel economy is handled mostly at the federal level, and vehicle miles traveled is going to be challenging for the state to control due to increase in ride sharing and automation. I want to note that the State Biofuels Act of 2008 actually requires Massachusetts to enter into a low carbon fuel standard with other states in the region. The low carbon fuel standard has a lot of precedent around the country and around the world. For example, California passed one about 10 years ago, and they have been successful in reducing emissions by over 16.6 million tons. If you adjust that for the population difference between Massachusetts and California, which is about 5.7 times difference in population, that amounts to 2.9 million tons of emissions that the state has left on the table in not following the law and passing a low carbon fuel standard since 2008. This is a common sense law that employs market-based measures to establish a cap and trade system on emissions in the transportation sector. And since California passed one, Oregon has also passed one, and just in November, Canada decided to pass one at the national level. most of all, I'd like to point out that it is the law that Massachusetts has to enter into one of these mechanisms per Section 6 of the State Biofuels Act from 2008. I don't fully understand why we haven't done that. It appears to me that it is a violation of the law, and so I'd employ DEP and the state to put together a low carbon fuel standard for the state as soon as possible.
Hi, everybody. Dan Gotti, Union of Concerned Scientists. I didn't realize I would be speaking so quickly, but I guess you guys went through speaking pretty quick. I just wanted to say, so you've maybe seen some of the analysis that I've put together. We'll be submitting some written comments. I wanted to say thank you. My work focuses specifically on transportation. We'll have other people within my organization also talking about the other aspects of this regulation. Within the transportation sector, I think that this regulation is going to be really important, as the previous speaker mentioned. You know, we've had some ambitious efforts to be able to create regional policies to reduce transportation emissions, like the LCFS. We haven't been able to kind of get a new big picture policy in this sector in a while, and I think it is going to be essential. When we look at the numbers that you guys have put together for transportation emissions reductions in 2018, 2019, 2020, you know, we see those reductions as being actually quite ambitious. So the numbers I crunched put that at about a 1.8% decline, annual decline starting in 2018 and continuing every year thereafter. We haven't been able to do that as a state in about 25 years. So being able to achieve these reductions, I think, is going to require some additional ambitious policies. And I hope that you guys are looking seriously at figuring out how to get additional reductions to make these limits that you guys have set actually happen. I think the two biggest questions that we have with this regulation and that we'll be focusing on in our written comments are, you know, one, what are the additional policies that are going to be able to keep us on track to achieve the reductions that you guys are laying out? And then I think the second thing that we need to be thinking about is what happens if the state isn't able to achieve the reductions that you guys have there. You know, I know you guys have talked about some alternative compliance mechanisms. I think this could be challenging in terms of being able to really be able to get mandatory enforceable emissions reductions. I know one thing that we're going to be looking at, as one and the previous speaker also somewhat suggested, is, you know, how do we get to the point where, you know, where we are requiring polluters to be able to acquire allowances and limiting that pool of allowances in order to be able to get an enforceable mechanism that way. I think that is going to be a really essential step to taking these reductions and making them really happen. So really happy that you guys are doing this. Really excited to be working with you guys, and hope to keep the dialogue going. Thank you.
We will be here till 11:30. I have finished the list of things that I want to present all testimony. Did we miss anyone or anything? We're going to pause.